Capri Song. I did it. Damn it. CAPRISONGS. Meant to be a play on like a
CAPRISONGS.
Capricorn, whatever, by
Let me
FKA
give some
Twigs.
now.
17 songs, 48 minutes long. And my hot take that I sent to Sean was that like FKA Twigs is basically this generation's Björk. And I mean that both in being like an avant-garde musician in all sense of the word, both in like how she performs
Mm,
and like displays herself, and also the way her music sounds, the way it melds through all these
yeah.
different genres and sounds. It is a sight to behold. And this album is I've had to give it a lot of listens over the past couple of week or so, and I loved Magdalene and I loved LP, like all of her
Yeah.
work, but this
Yeah.
might be my favorite of hers yet.
By far, this is absolutely my favorite of hers. Like no question. This the musical range on here is very, very broad, but it's still cohesive, which is hard to do in that way. You have pretty big um collaborations on here too. You have The Weeknd, you have Georgia Smith, Anansi, Daniel Caesar, Rema, Dystopia, so on. Like you have a lot of pretty big name people on here, but everybody fits in that record. There's no one artist that's out of place with it. There's no one song that really is out of place. And the big thing for me is the way the record plays out, way it flows through, every song is like perfectly placed where it needs to be. It's spaced out great. Album doesn't feel super long. Album doesn't feel super short. And there's a lot of like little interlude parts in these where it's like talking in the studio, making jokes or this or that, or saying some things, but they fit in the record. It doesn't throw it off necessarily, and some of them she'll put as into the songs themselves, or other things like literally cover songs interlude. Um, those ones you'll have like as a specific interlude, but they don't detract from the record at all. It adds to the story, it adds to the substance of it, which is good because normally we complain a lot about the interlude.
Yeah, it does a great job of. Let's start there. Production top notch. Um, yeah, the nothing of the interludes or anything like that gets in the way
Yeah,
of the project. It allows the message of what's coming through to shine and like be unbastardized, just like unadulterated,
exactly.
unfiltered, right there. Um, and then this is the range of what you get. Every song could stand alone as its own sort of like basis for making an album off of, and there are a lot of artists who will do just that. They will take the lead single or they will take like the best song they've got there and will just go, I'm just going to make 10, 12 copies of this and call it an album. Do it 3 times a year, call that a trap career. um so like that is very much not what's happening here.
No, like let me give you just an example before we really dive into it. Like this, like how different these songs are. Tears in the Club with The Weeknd is like your normal popish song, but it's a good, like a good pop song, right? And then you have Light Beamers, like in the middle of the album, which is this very avant-garde, experimental trap and beat-ish sound, but it's very, very different in the way that it's made. And those songs are totally different, but they still fit in the context of the record, which is hard to do. Very, very hard to do. And it's great. Very, very good. This is the first Twigs album that I very thoroughly enjoyed throughout it all. There's a lot of other stuff with their sounds where it's just, I think it's taken me a while to appreciate her in that way of like to see if her art form is very genuine. Well, not because you get that with some artists, but with everything, the way she presents herself, everything she's done in interviews and explaining her the style that she does and everything else really gets the sense of what she's trying to make. And this record is an accumulation of all that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, getting diving right into it. This album is an exploration of love, like many pop
Yep.
album, many a rap and trap and R&B, trap and B type album are. Uh, I would consider this like in a really inventive, bleeding edge neo pop, like neo soul kind of thing. Actually, less neo soul. It's just so experimental. It's hard to categorize and genre do it, but it's why we love Audioface. You start with Honda, and it has its own sort of upbeat, the one of a kind thing that it's doing with Pas Salut, and then it gets kind of, he has like this British rapper vibe to it, and
Hmm.
that gets really nice. And then you get songs like Tears in the Club with The Weeknd, which is FK Twigs and Abel kill it, like absolutely kill it. They just
Such a
go
good pop
so
song.
off on it. Um, and yeah, both those two songs, as you were kind of describing, have different vibes, but work perfectly on an album. It is so incredibly hard to do that, and we want that all the time. And so when an artist does that on Audioface, just nothing but top tier for us.
Yep.
And then you get into Oh My Love, and that's what I really love about
I
this
love that
project.
track.
Um, So "Oh My Love" is kind of a song about like finding, or like a woman, FKA Twigs, or just like a woman just in generally finding like self love through
Hmm.
realizing that like they are like um what they need. There's like one line that's kind of interlude in it, which is like, stop loving boys who don't even have the ability to love themselves to see like how like great you are, more or less, like
Yeah.
as a person. Because like, yeah, the song's basically just about like being a woman who is thinking that like you are like the number one in like a guy's life, but the guy hasn't like figured that out for himself yet.
Yep.
um Stones and glass houses. And so FKA Twigs is just, and the thing I really appreciate about this as like an approach is because, as I said, there's so many love records and love albums and things like that, but doing it from a way of, you know, self growth and self love that doesn't involve like, oh, I'm gonna like go behind your back and like cheat on someone, or like, oh, I'm gonna like do all this other like weird shit. This is just like a solid, like non corny, um, I am going to love myself because I deserve it kind of song. And yeah, you get so it's a message in these types of records that you don't see very often, that FKA Twigs manages to go throughout this. It's a lot about loving yourself
Yep.
and seeing
Yep.
yourself as the shit and not needing it to be proven by other people, and kind of owning that. But also, it's FKA Twigs having vulnerability and saying like, sometimes I'm sad because I don't feel this way, or like I don't like feel like I'm living up to even that high standard of myself, but I'm trying to have positive emotions and affirmations for myself and for others to make it past that. And I think
Yeah.
that's just incredible.
And I believe they're still together, but Twigs and Maddie Healy have been together for a minute. So
Bless.
God bless. You got to deal with Maddie Healy, girl. God bless. As much as I love him, he's a handful. I can only assume.
Oh yeah.
But also remember, she had that whole Shia LaBeouf thing that happened last year too, where all of the abuse and everything was when they were together, and she outed him for all of the nasty, disgusting things that she did, that he did to her. And you can hear some of that in this record too, of her really kind of like opening up a little bit about it, not necessarily like really like spouting it out, but you can hear some of that in there if you know the story and all that, which we did on the spot, fine established podcast and all of that. So for someone who has been through so much to make this, I really like it. It's so genuine in that way of, especially as we said earlier, with records that we get all the time that they don't feel genuine within the space in the realm of talking about love and talking about personal problems and personal issues in that regard. But this way, it's done in a fun and way. It's done in a way that is like similar to Björk. Björk has made so many songs about love and triumph and tragedy and all of that stuff, but she does it in an experimental way that it sounds very different to anyone else. And you get that sense of Twigs. And that's not a comparison I like to make lightly, because Björk is one of my favorite artists of all time. One of the greatest, in my opinion. And like example, a song from Björk of Unravel, like you listen to that, it's just such like a powerful, really, really intimate track. But then also she'll go on there and she'll wear a giant Apple suit and dance around on stage, not taking herself seriously too. So like you get that kind of two sides, and you start to get that now with Twigs more too. So, but again, I can't talk more good about this record than we already have. So just listen to the fucker.
Yeah. I will point out one thing.
Mm,
There's Darjeeling at the bottom where you have FK Twigs and Georgia Smith.
mm.
It's Sonic Bliss. Loved
It's
it.
just that is, if we could pick one of the tracks where it's like, all right, what is Audioface about? Shit right here.
Yeah.
More Georgia Smith and FKA Twigs together. More of it.
And like, I don't want to do more editing, but like, I want to talk about every single song in detail. I just like will not sample more than
Yeah,
like
exactly.
2 or 3 songs per review, just out of like making my brain not hurt. But all of these songs are so good. I'm gonna be playing them so much, and it plays
Yep.
through nicely as an
Agreed.
album. It plays through nicely on shuffle. Like, hell, FKA Twigs just keep killing it. I don't. Yeah, she's very much in a you can't do wrong as an artist territory for me. This is one of a very
Yeah, she's
early
getting up
content.
there.
Yeah, it's a very, once again, I think so far we have The Weekend and this for Audioface Awards this year. I could
Yeah,
definitely see this winning something.
and I could also see like Miles Kane for Rock of the Year as well, something along
That's
the lines
solid.
of
I
that
could see
too.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, but
we'll,
moving on
no,
to,
no, we'll continue
oh,
the arbitrary scale from this
oh yeah,
week in
that's
the main
right.
episode. We're doing green, yellow, red cards. I don't need to explain why we do arbitrary scales to the organic members, but it's, you know, the system in for behavioral tracking in elementary school: green good, yellow meh, red bad. So this is, I mean, we gave the last album review, Yard Act, so green it's red.
This is so green that the teacher forgot to put your cards in there. So you walk into class and there's no cards up there because she says it's a free day, and you're like, I'm so confused. It's a trap. But then you can do whatever you want, and then fucking it's just a riot. That's how good this is.
Chair gets thrown across the room.
It's just like an avatar where he's like picks up the dude. Hey, riot! And they just look at each other. And it's just fucking chaos and shit. People get fucked. Firebenders going around, earthbenders going around. I'm like, yes, more chaos.